Hi, I'm Jim Hogan, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to study for and pass your real estate exam. So let's get to it. Let's first talk about what the test is all about. First of all, there are two components to almost all the real estate exams around the country. There's a national portion, which covers things that are common throughout the U.S., and then there's a state-specific portion. So whatever state you happen to be in, there'll be a section that deals with material, typically state law and rules and regulations for that particular state. Now, I live in Tucson, Arizona, so some of this video will talk about what's happening in Arizona, but check with your test provider to make sure you know not only what state you're in, I'm sure you know that, but what the content of that state portion of the examination is. So that national component deals with principles and practices, again, that are common across the United States. So, for example, appraisal principles, financing, general real estate principles and practices like estates and title insurance, and many other areas. The vocabulary is key for studying the national component. You know, in the courses that I teach, and I've been in the real estate school business since 1973, the courses that I teach, we have over 450 vocabulary terms. So vocabulary is really key for the national portion of the examination. The state component deals with state-specific laws, rules, commissioner's rules or real estate department rules. And what's key here is points of information, or what I commonly call key facts. And I'll give you a few illustrations of those as we go through. As far as test methods are concerned, the examinations are multiple choice questions. In Arizona, we have 4 multiple choice questions with none of the above, no all of the above as a choice. Some states do have all of the above or none of the above as a choice. There are no fill-in-the-blank questions. There are no essay questions. So statistically, even if you knew nothing about real estate whatsoever, you should be able to score 25% on the examination. So first of all, what's the worst study method that you can follow? And the worst study method is memorizing questions. You know, throughout your real estate course, you're going to be having an awful lot of test questions. And what a lot of students try to do is memorize those questions, thinking that those questions are going to be exactly like they are on the state examination. Absolutely not true. Those questions that you get in the class are modeled after what state exam questions deal with, but they are certainly not the exact same questions. And what students come back from the examination, oftentimes they say, you know, I really studied those questions a lot, but the wording on the examination was very different. Well, that's because they memorized or tried to memorize a lot of those questions. So what's the better or best study methods? What you want to do is you want to first of all set a study schedule. If at all possible, block out some time each and every day to study. And study in a quiet area. Find yourself a quiet area. Now, if it's really hectic at home, that might mean that you'll have to step out and go to the library or close the door in a nice quiet room so you have at least 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever you can spare to study. And of course, what you want to do is you want to focus. You don't want to have other distractions. So don't be playing any music. Leave your phone outside. Focus on studying the vocabulary and the key points. Reading through the course material is the first thing you want to do, but you also want to do it in small bits, a page or so at a time, a topic or so at a time. And read out loud and listen to what it is you're saying. Now, when you take your exams, you of course don't want to be reading the questions out loud. But while you're studying, read out loud. Hearing it as well as seeing it will make a difference for you. In my opinion, the best way to study is to memorize vocabulary. The national portion of the exam is heavy on vocabulary. And for the state-specific portion, you want to memorize the key facts. And Reading, I want you to understand, is not memorizing. So just reading through and turning the pages is not memorizing. What you want to do is you want to study and memorize in small groups, in small amounts. Repetition is the key to memorization. So let's say you're reading through something and you don't understand a term. Well, what you want to do is you want to look it up. Don't pass over it without thinking, hey, what does that mean? Look it up. One of the best book that I recommend is John Riley's Language of Real Estate. Get yourself a copy of it, whether you go on Amazon or a used bookstore. Make sure you get a copy of the Language of Real Estate. Also, Google a term. Now, I did say to leave your cell phone outside while you're studying, but if you have your cell phone there, which many people will, look it up. Go on Google and look up that term. There are a lot of real estate dictionaries, a lot of real estate vocabulary on the web, so Google it. Now, when you memorize in small amounts. Don't try to take too much at one time. And when you're memorizing, let's say 4 terms. Let's say you're going to memorize 4 terms. Say them out loud and repeat them. Say the term and then say the definition and then repeat it. Close your eyes. Let's say you've got those 4 terms, you've said them out loud, you repeat them. Close your eyes and visualize that list of terms and say it out loud. Repeat it out loud to yourself. Now, vocabulary actually comes in 2 parts. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, there's a definition of a term, and then there are examples. So let me see if I can explain what I mean. Here's the term eminent domain. Now, the definition of eminent domain is the right of the government to take private property for public use with compensation to the owner. That's the definition. What are some examples? Well, for example, road widening. If the street is being widened and that means the government is going to have to take property to accomplish that road widening, that's an example. Universities, state universities oftentimes expand, and in doing so they exercise eminent domain and condemn properties in order to expand. Or utilities or railroads are oftentimes granted limited rights of eminent domain to be able to achieve or to acquire their rights of way. So those are just a few examples of eminent domain. But the definition is as stated there, and the examples are actually what most of us remember more than the definition. Let me give you another one. Functional obsolescence, which is an appraisal term. The definition of functional obsolescence is a loss in value due to outdated features, technological advances, or a poor floor plan. So some examples where you have a house built in the 1960s, for example, may work perfectly. The kitchens and the bathrooms may be fine, but those kitchens and baths are clearly outdated. That's an example of functional obsolescence. Or, you know, the light bulb was invented in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and houses prior to that didn't have electricity. So after that, all of the new homes had electricity, but all of the older ones became functionally obsolete. Or the simplest example might be a 3 or a 4 bedroom house with just 1 bathroom. Now, the definition again is that loss in value brought about by these outdated features and so on, but the examples are what stick in our mind. If you really want to know your stuff, remember the definition, memorize the definition, and then remember the examples. Let's talk for a minute about flashcards. This is the best way to go about doing your studying. Get yourself some 3x5 cards, and first of all, write down the basic or general topic that this term is going to deal with. And let's take the term economic obsolescence, which is one of the terms in the appraisal category. On the other side, write the definition. The definition of economic obsolescence is a loss in value due to factors outside of the property. Well, that's the definition. What about some examples? Well, a declining market causing property values to go down, or a loss of jobs in the area, or smoke from nearby factories, or an increase in noise in the neighborhood. Those are all examples of situations that cause economic obsolescence. Here's a few more flashcards. On liens, what's the term hypothecation mean? Well, hypothecation is pledging a property as collateral while not giving up possession. And we hypothecate real property because we name it as collateral for the bank, with the bank, but we still live in the house. And some examples are, of course, mortgages, trust deeds, and contracts for sale of real estate or land contracts. How about this one? In financing, what's a budget loan? Well, a budget loan is a loan that's paid PITI, meaning principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And the examples where loans are budget loans are all FHA and VA loans are budget loans, and many conventional loans are as well. How about this one? In leases, a gross lease. What's a gross lease? Well, it's a lease where the tenant pays no expenses. The rent represents a gross income to the landlord. And the examples where gross leases are common is in apartment buildings and full-service office buildings. How about in state-specific stuff where we're talking about key facts or key points? In the real estate code or licensing law, how long does a broker have to keep records for? That's almost on every exam across the country, and the answer is 5 years from the closing or termination of a transaction. Now, with these key facts, it's a lot harder to come up with examples. It's strict memorization of the fact. Here's another one in real estate code. A broker must review an initial contract within what period of time? And the answer is 10 business days from the date of the contract acceptance. Again, there's no real examples here. The broker simply has to know to review and initial those contracts within 10 business days. And that one is an Arizona-specific one. How about under deeds of trust? The redemption period after a non-judicial foreclosure of a trust deed. What's that redemption period? The answer is there isn't any. Why? Because this is a non-judicial foreclosure of that deed of trust. So in the state-specific ones, generally speaking, they deal with more of these key facts, so you have fewer examples. Here's one more. Taxes. The interest rate on delinquent taxes, again, Arizona-specific, it's 16%. Flat out fact. You got to know it. One of the things you want to do with your flashcards is group them by topic. So put them in small batches. Put some rubber bands around them based on subject. What is it? Appraisal, financing, zoning, you name it. Another thing that's going to help you in your studying is acronyms. Wherever you can, put an acronym to those 3 or 4 things that are grouped together. For example, PETE, P-E-T-E, those are the 4 government rights or government limitations on ownership. Police power, eminent domain, taxation, and escheat. How about this one? PITI. That's a budget loan payment. What does it stand for? It stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Here's another one. TTIP. This represents the 4 unities of joint tenancy: time, title, interest, and possession. Here's Notch. For adverse possession and prescription, the use has to be notorious, open, continuous, and hostile. So wherever you can put acronyms to something, that's going to help you remember these things. Here's one more. Arizona-specific, PEMA. The 4 duties of the real estate commissioner happen to be represented by this acronym. Stands for promulgate rules, investigate complaints, manage the ADRE, and audit licensees' records. Let's talk a little bit about math. Now, in most of the examinations around the country, math is only about 10% of the exam. So out of 80 questions, typically on the national exam, only about 7 or 8 questions will be math questions. And my recommendation to you is to memorize the formulas. Once you see a math question, what you want to do is you want to write the formula down. You want to then plug in the numbers. So for example, the property tax formula is you take the property value and you multiply it by the assessment rate or the assessment ratio, which gives you the assessed value. Then you multiply the assessed value by the tax rate, and that gives you the taxes. Now go ahead and read your question and plug in the information. If the question said the property was worth $100,000 and the assessment rate was 18%, then the assessed value is going to be $18,000. and you multiply that by the tax rate given in the problem. Oftentimes it's given as so many dollars here, $13 per $100 of assessed value, so it's 0.13, and the taxes would be $2,340. Here's an interest problem. Same thing. How do you calculate the monthly interest or the annual interest on a loan? So first of all, for the annual interest, you take the loan amount times the interest rate, and that gives you the annual interest. And then you divide that by 12 months per year, and then you get the monthly interest. So let's say we had a loan of $100,000. We could plug that in, multiply it by the interest rate. Let's say it was 4.8%. That gives us annual interest of $4,800, and we divide it by 12 months per year. That gives us the monthly interest of $400. So what if a question asked for the principal reduction on a loan payment? Well, after you've completed and calculated the monthly interest, then you take the principal and interest payment that they would give you in the question, subtract from that the monthly interest, and that gives you the principal pay down. So for example, let's say you were told in the question that the the total monthly payment, P&I, was $524, and you'd subtract the interest that you calculated there for $400. So then the principal portion of that payment is $124. Lastly, let's say that you were asked to calculate what the remaining balance is after that first month. So the balance at the beginning of the loan, from that you would subtract the principal portion of the payment to give you the remaining balance. So you write the formula down, and then you go ahead and plug in the numbers. The original balance was $100,000. The principal portion that we just calculated was $124. The remaining balance is $99,876. So again, what I want to emphasize here is write down the formula in sequence and then go to the problem and plug in the numbers. Now, some of the questions deal with percentages, like commissions, like interest on a loan, like appraisal problems. So we use what's called the memory circle in some of our classes. And in the memory circle, what I want to emphasize is you take the small dollars and you put it on the top. And then you take the large dollars and put them on the bottom left, and then the percentage or the rate on the bottom right. And what that tells you is the small dollars are equal to the large dollars times the rate or the percentage. For example, in a commission problem, is the commission the small dollars or is the sales price the small dollars? Well, the commission is the small dollars and the sales price is the large dollars. So the commission would go on top, the sales price on the bottom left. How about in an interest problem? On the interest on a loan, is the interest the small dollars or is the loan amount the small dollars? Well, of course, the interest is the small dollars and the loan amount is the large dollars. Let's take a few examples. Here's a commission problem. A price of $100,000, the commission rate is 5%. What's the commission? So remember, small dollars, that's the commission, are equal to the big dollars times the rate or the percentage. So let's plug them in. Oh, by the way, cover up what you're looking for here. You want to cover up what you're looking for. We're looking for the commission, so cover that up. That tells us to multiply the price times the rate. So in our example, all right, we've got $100,000 as the price times the 5%. The commission is price times rate, or $5,000. Let's take an appraisal problem, a capitalization problem, where we have the income from the property at $100,000 and the capitalization rate, we're told, is 5%. We're trying to find the value of the property. So in our memory circle, remember the small dollars go on top. That's the income because the value has to be larger than the income. And we're looking for the value. That's what the problem is asking. So let's cover that up, and that tells us to divide the income by the rate. So let's do that in this example where we have $100,000 as our income. We're looking for value, and the interest or the cap rate is 5%. Value is equal to income divided by rate. The value is $100,000 divided by 5%, or $2 million. So remember, in the memory circle, it's always the small dollars on top are equal to the large dollars on the bottom left times the rate. Let's take a few minutes and talk about test techniques. First and foremost, what I'd like you to do is read the question twice. And while you're reading it, read it slowly with some focus. Slow yourself down by 5 to 10% as compared to what you might have done in class. Ask yourself, what's the general topic of the question? For example, a question on contracts. And then what subcategory? So maybe it's the classification of contracts, expressed versus implied, unilateral versus bilateral, and so on. And then ask yourself, what specifically are they asking for? Then what you want to do is eliminate the weak choices. In most multiple choice questions, there's what's called the key, that's the correct answer, and then there's 3 distractors. And usually there's one pretty good distractor, but the other 2 are usually a little bit weaker, so try to eliminate those weaker choices. Base your answer on a vocabulary term or a key fact. Remember, this is an entry-level examination, so these questions, although they may appear to be sophisticated, really deal with the basics. They deal with a vocabulary term or they deal with a key fact in most circumstances. Mark questions for review. If you're unsure, even if you answered it, mark it for review, and at the end of the exam, the computer will keep track of it and you can go back and answer it. Skip questions that you don't know. Again, the computer will keep track of this for you. Once you've finished the whole exam and you've gone back and reviewed the questions that you marked and that you answered the ones that you skipped, then review the whole examination again. Why? I promise you, I guarantee you, you made a silly mistake. You misread a question or two. And you know, when people come back from the state exam and they say they didn't pass, well, usually they don't pass by just getting a 50%. They probably got a 72 or a 73 or 74%. They missed it by 1 or 2 questions. So if you review the whole exam, the chances are that you will pick up those little silly mistakes. Now, be real careful. Don't change answers unless you know you absolutely made a mistake. If you find yourself starting to change answers because you're second guessing yourself, then it's time to get up and leave the examination. Only change answers when you know you made a silly mistake. One of the questions that comes up is, should I do the math as it comes in the examination or should I skip it and do it last? Our recommendation is to do the math last. Think of the exam as having 2 parts, the non-math questions and then the math questions. And as you're going through the exam, some people who are weak in math, what might happen is they might stumble over the math question, maybe take a long time doing the math, trying to figure it out, and then they realize, oh gee, I'm upset because I don't have enough time now, so I'm taking too much time on the math. This way, if you go through the verbal questions, the non-math questions, skipping the math, remember the computer will keep track of the ones you skipped, you'll be able to address the questions dealing with vocabulary and the key facts, and then go back and do the math. You know, over the years, we've had a lot of people who have told us that by skipping the math, it really enabled them to concentrate just on the non-math portion of the examination. Even if you have to guess, please make sure you guess on the math and any other question as well, because this exam is based on a strict percentage, not a percentile. Now, I guarantee you the day of your exam, the butterflies will not be flying in formation. The scariest moment is always just before you start. Realize that, please. And how do you get those butterflies to fly in formation? Here's some suggestions. Make sure you get a good night's sleep the day before the examination. And block out enough time for the exam. If they're going to allocate you 5 hours for the test, make sure you don't have any major appointments before or after the examination. You don't want to feel rushed going into the exam, and you don't want to feel like you have to get up and go because you have an appointment. Make no other commitments that day. Take some deep breaths. When you sit down at the computer, there'll be a little bit of a tutorial. Take some time to go through that. Take a few deep breaths and it will start to relax you. Start slowly. Ease into the examination. You'll develop a pace after the first 5 or 10 minutes, but take those first few minutes just to ease into the examination. Finally, as we wrap this up, I want you to believe. I want you to believe you can pass. You want to think positively. Even if you've been out of school for a long time, studying regularly and following our guidelines will make a big difference for you. You can do it. You can pass. I would suggest that you use some affirmations. Tell yourself, I can do this. Say it out loud, I will pass. And follow our studying guidelines in this video, and it will make a huge difference for you. I'm Jim Hogan, and I wish you the best of luck in your studying. I know you'll pass your examination if you follow these guidelines. Please subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next video.